everyone, and welcome to our Mobility Matters Transportation Updates virtual town hall. I am Supervisor Boddye, and I will be joined by a pretty lean but awesome panel this evening. So thank you so much for joining us. Just a couple quick housekeeping things. This meeting will be recorded. It's streaming live right now on YouTube, but it will be recorded, so if folks didn't make it or they have to pop out for life or whatever happens, this is recorded, and so it will be available on our YouTube channel for the Occoquan District after the conclusion of tonight's program. And as always, you can sign up for updates and get all the different information for these kind of projects and town halls on our website at occoquandistrict.net. Tonight is all about mobility. And why it's not just called a transportation town hall is because we're also going to be talking about not only road improvements and transportation and transit, but also our trail system and our greenways and our blueways. So our great panel today is going to talk about all the different ways in which we're trying to improve the way that people can move and are moved through the Occoquan District. Tonight, I will be joined by Rick Canizales, who is our Director of Prince William County Department of Transportation, Paulo Belita, who is also in the Department of Transportation. He's our Planning Manager, and Neil Nelson, who is the Prince William Trails and Blueways Council member and our appointee for the Occoquan District. A quick remarks from me before we dive into our panelists. We had some questions and comments from a few different constituents about the vehicle noise issue. As most people on here and will be watching are aware, we have been very vocal about this issue. I know a lot of our constituents have reached out to us about the vehicle noise issue. And I can tell you that we have done a lot in this area as much as we can. We had a town hall about this almost a year and a half ago at this point. And basically the long and short of it is that based on how the current laws are in Richmond that affect us here in Prince William County, our local police PD, their hands are sort of tied on how they can deal with those offenses. There are secondary offenses right now. So my office has worked with our colleagues on the Board of Supervisors and with some of our colleagues in Richmond to begin looking at legislative fixes for this. Bills were filed in the General Assembly this year to hopefully address those. Unfortunately, both of those bills that were offered by Delegate Vivian Watts in the House and Senator Saslaw in the State Senate both died in committee because the General Assembly folks felt that they needed a little bit more work before they're ready for prime time and for passage. So unfortunately, we're in a place where our folks still can't do a lot about the vehicle noise issue, but please rest assured, Occoquan District residents, that my office has been taking this seriously since day one, and we continue to work with our colleagues both on the board here in Prince William and our colleagues down in Richmond to address this. But anyway, so as we said, land use and planning are definitely linked, and we always have to remember that we cannot do these things in silos. So while we won't be getting too much into the weeds on planning and land use, I do know that Paulo and Rick and Neil are all big sort of advocates of making sure that we're having an integrated approach to how we plan out these transportation improvements we'll be talking about. And I highly encourage that as we go through the comprehensive plan update for the land use chapter, the housing chapter, and the mobility chapter, that everyone gets involved. You know, it's once in a generation that we get to look at these changes as a community and really address them. And as we shift away from the sleepy bedroom community into a more walkable, compact, live, work, play environment, all these issues are ones that we want to hear from you, our constituents, about. So without further ado, I will hand it off to Rick and Paulo. They can talk about what's been going on in the Occoquan District in terms of transportation.
Thank you, Supervisor Boddye.
I'll say something.
Share my screen over. All right, thank you, Supervisor Boddye. Have my screen shared. So good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Paulo Belita with Prince William County Department of Transportation, joined by Ricardo Canizales with the Director of Transportation. Tonight, we're very excited to give a brief update on some of the major mobility projects in the Occoquan District. We'll highlight grants and funding applications, talk about major studies, as well as active projects and some of the different initiatives our transit partners at PRTC are implementing. With that, I'll jump into our grant slide. These are the different grants and funding update. The first table are the different funding applications that were awarded over the past year and a half. 1.34 million that went to the Old Bridge Road sidewalk improvements between Oakwood Drive and Forest Hill, $4 million towards the 123 Old Bridge Road intersection improvements, and a very excited multimodal project, $2.8 million towards the Horner Road Park and Ride expansion project. And the next table, we have applications that we have submitted for funding. We're currently awaiting $5 million requested towards the Old Bridge 123 project, $2 million under the Transportation Alternatives Program. This is for the Ellicott Street Occoquan Greenway Connection Project, 4.3 towards 123 in Old Bridge. A major project at MBTA, $25 million. We're requesting for the 4-lane section Old Bridge Road between Colby Drive and Minnieville Road, and a countywide study for $60,000 to look at high school pedestrian safety improvements countywide. We did want to highlight that to show the improvement in safety throughout the county. Jumping into our major studies, many are aware of the 123 corridor study. The study is looking at 3 locations: Route 123 at Route 1, I-95 at 123, and 123 at Old Bridge Road. With the 123 and Route 1 intersection, that is a project we continue to identify funding for. With the 95 at 123 improvements project, VDOT did implement or identify $70 million towards interchange improvements at that location. And at 123 and Old Bridge Road, we're looking at potential improvements that will look at a flyover ramp. This study is ongoing and will be completed earlier this year. With regards to the Old Bridge Road at 123 improvements, I know there's a lot of questions. The exact design will be determined as we go into the design phase, but conceptually, the improvements looks at an overpass from northbound 123 to westbound Old Bridge Road. And like I mentioned, the exact improvements and impact will be determined during the design phase. Another study we're very excited about is VDOT's multimodal pipeline study. It's similar to STARS, but it looks at corridor-wide improvements. VDOT is doing a study on Prince William Parkway between Smoketown Road and Caton Hill Road, looking at intersection improvements and bike ped safety improvements as well. This is ongoing, but ideally VDOT's looking for improvements that adds additional turn lanes, crosswalks, innovative intersections such as through-cut intersections, and intersection improvements that really improve throughput along the corridor. This is ongoing, which should be completed sometime this summer. Going into active projects. The first is the Old Bridge Road, Occoquan Road intersection improvements. This realigns Old Bridge Road, Occoquan, the intersection itself. We did have a joint in-person virtual public hearing that was held last month at Occoquan Elementary School. We had a good turnout, very excited. Project design began in June of 2020 and will be completed later this year. Construction is anticipated to begin in early 24 with completion in early 26. It is fully funded with VDOT Smart School funds. As you can see with the schedule, with a federal project, it does take a little bit longer. There's different requirements with a federal project compared to a locally funded project. And here's a concept that was shared at last month's virtual information meeting, showing the realignment along with the bike ped facilities and the intersection improvements itself. Next project is the Summit School Road and Telegraph Road improvements. The project extends Summit School Road where it currently terminates at Kennecott Drive and ties into Telegraph Road. The project does include widening Telegraph Road from Caton Hill Road to Prince William Parkway from 2 to 4 lanes. Project design began in 2019, completed summer last year. We anticipate to begin construction late this year, and which project itself will be completed in early 2024. It does say on the screen that it's funded at $11 million. NVTA has fully funded the project at a total of $35 million. So we're very excited to move forward with this project. Just another conceptual rendering of the project. The project does include a trail on the east side, a sidewalk on the west side throughout the length of the project. And it does include improvements to the future school at this location. So we're continuing working with our public school system on implementing improvements that will help circulation within their facilities as well. Next project isn't a county project, but it is a very important project in the Occoquan District. This is VDOT's I-95 southbound auxiliary lane project. This essentially extends the on-ramp if you're going southbound on 95 from 123 as you get on 95. It extends that merge area to tie into the on-ramp from 95 to Prince William Parkway. There's a lot of weaving issues, and the intent is to really minimize some of the conflicts and improve throughput along this section of 95. This project is going fully funded at approximately $28 million and will be completed by the end of the year. One project we did want to highlight that is upcoming is the Prince William Parkway at Old Bridge Road intersection improvements project. What the project does is realigns Prince William Parkway at Old Bridge Road to be continuous. The project is, initially was funded with Smart Scale at FY 26 and 27. Working with VDOT, we were able to accelerate the funds and plan to begin design sometime this year. So this is a very exciting project. As you know, if you're going from 95 towards Manassas on Prince William Parkway, you have the dual left. As you get on the parkway in other direction, you have a single off ramp to stay on the parkway. So this project improves throughput by realigning the parkway as the major through corridor on this intersection. Other improvement projects we have in the Occoquan District are two pedestrian improvement projects. Old Bridge Road between Tackett's Mill and Minnieville Road. This project is under construction and should be completed soon. Another project on Old Bridge Road between Oakwood and Forest Hill project, another grant project. Project is currently under design and will be completed late this year or early 2023. Switching to some of the initiatives that OmniRide or PRTC or transit partners, they're looking at a zero emissions bus study to really study some of the different emerging technology as it relates to alternative fuels for the transit fleet. Study is ongoing. It will be completed this summer. The study will not really dictate the next steps, but look at some of the pros and cons with some of the different fleet options they have from going to diesel to newer technology. So this is very exciting and it's underway. OmniRide is also looking at a mobile ticketing study to look at new payment methods on some of their network fare products. They're going to look at some of the best practices and training of staff. Study is ongoing. They plan to implement a 9-month demo starting this spring and looking at alternate ways to accept payments. So this is another very exciting study. In addition to that, OmniRide does have various mobility councils to really give a forum to the public and find ways to share information. They have the Vanpool Council, the Employer Council, as well as the Hispanic Council, all active and have met over the past several months. With that, I will turn to questions and I'll hand it back over to Supervisor Boddye.
If you don't mind, Supervisor, just one additional thought. Rick Canizales, Director of Transportation. All the projects that Paulo described, I did want to bring up, include pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So all the major road improvements that we have discussed this evening, not only just the standalone bike and ped projects, but all the projects include both a pedestrian and multi-use trail as well as a sidewalk on the opposite side. So I just wanted to make sure that we brought that up to make everybody aware that as we're planning facilities nowadays, we do continue to, like you said earlier, think comprehensively and want to make sure that we're multimodal and go back to mobility rather than transportation. Thank you.
Sure, no, absolutely. And if anyone who's driven by Old Bridge and Minnieville, they're literally digging up right now along Tackett's Mill. And I am assuming, Paolo and Rick, that's the project you guys were just talking about with the sidewalks.
Correct, yes. Underway and it should be completed in the very near future.
Absolutely. I see Noel has a hand raised, but what we'll do is we'll let Neil go ahead and do his presentation, then we'll double back for questions. Neil, without further ado, go for it.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. And let me first note that my fellow appointee on the Trails and Blueways Council, Eileen Sheridan, she normally would be here tonight, but she's unable to attend tonight. So I've got 3 things to go through quickly from the Trails and Blueways Council perspective. And the first one is an update on the Occoquan Greenway Trail project. If I was gonna say, Jason, if you could enlarge a little bit, yeah, that's a little better. Okay, if you've been out on the trail lately, you'll not have seen any major new construction, but it is coming, and we'll go through the sites here. On the upper left, we're talking about segment 3, the new bridge and trail alignment on Hedges Run, the stream. The solicitation for bids on that bridge construction should be out. The Parks Department is planning for that the bid period to close on April 8. since we last had a meeting like this, they did get the bridge construction permit approved and the site construction plan is approved. So if the bids, I haven't got confirmation that the solicitation is out, but it's supposed to be. It was very close just a few days ago. So anyway, they'll be looking at the bids in April, and tentatively or planning for construction in the summer, over the summer months, from the May to September period, if things go as scheduled. And concurrently, so that's the bridge's construction itself. And concurrently, they will hire another contractor for a smaller project, the trail realignment. In that section, they're lifting the trail up away from the stream bank and putting it at higher ground, and of course aligning it to meet the new bridge. And doing that is going to eliminate the need for 3 smaller bridges down on the old trail, 3 stream crossings, and in an area that is subject to erosion and flooding. All right, the next project that's underway is in segment 4. That's the Blacktop Trail off of Cotton Mill Drive. The plan there is to replace that small footbridge there that's been in place for a long time, decades, and it's been undermined by erosion. That's also a project that is going to kick off soon and should be done this summer. And then moving on down to the lower right of the map, the Who's Run crossing. What's labeled the proposed bridge site there is outdated. I think this map was produced in 2019. And since then, the Parks Department has recommended some alternatives for the bridge crossing, and the approved crossing site is now the red line there up closer to Old Bridge Road. And I noted that Tina Hernan was online, and she's very familiar with this. The Lake Ridge Board actually approved that bridge site, bridge location, and bridge type on Tuesday evening at the Lake Ridge HOA board meeting. Tina's a member of the board, so she's familiar with this. So that's been settled. That was kind of pending for a while, but that's been documented now, approved by the board, Lake Ridge Board. And the Parks Department has actually been planning for that location and continues to plan. Let me bring up my notes here. I want to look at some of the details. So what is underway now and will continue actually throughout this year is the survey plats and topo maps, conceptual plan, construction plans, and then permitting after that. And there's right now the schedule shows bidding for the Who's Run Bridge in January, February of 2023. So the actual construction is a ways off. It's at least mid 2023, but at least a year away or more than a year away. But when that bridge is built, that will open up a major part of the Occoquan Greenway Trail, a major open area, make it more accessible to people. Note too that there have been some trail improvements in that area over the recent months, improvements on some of the existing segments, and then putting in or defining the trail, putting in some new segments. So there's a usable trail there now, and we actually did a hike on it in a couple of hikes in January, and we'll plan on keeping that open in the future now. All right, I think that covers everything on the Occoquan Greenway Trail. The next topic I want to touch on is jump back onto the importance of bike ped connectivity and what's going on from the Trails Council perspective in county planning. The TBC, the Trails Council, continues to advocate for bicycling and pedestrian infrastructure in the county and recreational trails. As Supervisor Boddye mentioned, the comp plan is being updated, the mobility chapter, which includes all modes of transportation, bicycling and pedestrian as well. So the Trails Council continues to review development applications and transportation projects to ensure that biking and pedestrian facilities are included or at least considered. And we also did a review of the draft mobility chapter, the policies and action strategies, and we submitted our comments on that. And we encourage residents to do the same thing. You can still go to the Roadmap to 2040 site, look at the mobility chapter policies and action strategies and review them. And they do include policies related to bike ped infrastructure and recreational trails. They're there. They're still accepting comments. I'll note that the trails map was posted earlier, the draft trails map, and they were soliciting input on that, but that's been closed now. And what we're waiting for is the county staff to go through all the comments they received. I think there were hundreds of them, and they'll be posting the revised map at some point in the future. Again, encourage you all to comment on the mobility chapter, the text, the strategies, and or the policies and action strategies. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was some volunteer opportunities and activities related to streams, trails and streams. Unfortunately, in this county, everywhere, the trash continues to be collected and washed into the watershed. So we have some major cleanups throughout the year. We did the Neabsco Boardwalk and stream cleanup on March 5th, a real good turnout for that, and collected a lot of trash, over 100 bags of trash for that location, a lot of volunteers, a good event. An upcoming volunteer opportunity is a similar stream cleanup of Marumsco Stream and Wetland at Veterans Park. That's on Saturday, April 2nd. Again, that's an area where the stream flows through the developed area, comes down to the floodplain and wetland and deposits a lot of the trash, primarily plastics, plastic containers, plastic pollution. So we haven't done that one in a few years, and yeah, there's a lot there to get right now, April 2nd. And I'll note that the Friends of the Occoquan is doing their annual cleanup on April 9th. And a good activity to look forward to is another hike on the Occoquan Greenway Trail on May 8th, one of the scheduled second Sunday hikes. Not exactly sure what route we're going to take, but that should be a good hike as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Neil. Appreciate it. And as Neil said, there have been a couple hikes on the Greenway already this year. I took part in one not too long ago. We walked on a trail that him and his crew have only recently marked, and I can tell you that when the Greenway is open, I don't have to tell this group this, but I will anyway, it'll probably be one of the biggest treasures we have in the Occoquan District. Having a full-length trail that goes from the town of Occoquan all the way to the McCourt building and beyond will be a great public amenity. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to again thank the LRPRA board and their community for their partnership in this, because a lot of the biggest part of the middle part of the Greenway goes right through their HOA land. So they've been big supporters of this, and we would not be able to get as far as we have this far without their support. And as Neil mentioned, some of the biggest hurdles we've had thus far have been identifying and getting these water crossings, who's running some of these other water crossings. And as he said, this past Tuesday night, the board approved the proposed crossing. So big hurdles have been crossed, pun intended, and we'll continue to work together on that. So again, thank you so much, Neil, for all your hard work as well.
Sure, thank you.
That said, we're going to shift into the question and answer session of tonight's town hall. Before I get to the predetermined questions, I know that Noel had their hand raised right before Neil jumped on. So I know in the interest of making sure you don't forget your question, Noel, you can go ahead and start us out.
Okay, thank you. My question is regarding the bike lanes that are currently under construction, if I heard correctly. Are these bike lanes just painted bike lanes, or are they actually separated bike paths that are supposed to be used for pedestrians as well? And if they are painted bike lanes, are these bike lanes going to be including a physical barrier or median between the relatively high speed traffic?
Well, thank you for your question, and that's something. Look, can you clarify which project you're referring to, so we can further expand on it?
And if you're discussing what my comment was, ma'am, where I said that these projects come with multi-use trails and sidewalks, yes, it is not a painted bike lane. It is a multi-use facility that is usually somewhere between 6 to 8 feet separated from the road, 10-foot blacktop, sometimes 8 feet, depends on the area. But it's a multi-use trail, not bike lanes that I was discussing. We do have some bike lanes in certain areas of the county. Hoadley Road has a few, but we don't have too many of just the painted bike lanes around the county at this time.
And if I could just add that it is, as both Rick and Paulo said, and as Noel, as Neil alluded to, we are working on that. A big part of the update to the comprehensive plan includes us talking about how we can really expand our offerings for pedestrian and cyclists. So like Rick said, while you don't see a lot of dedicated sort of bike lanes right now, those are something that are more sort of driven towards urban designs and what have you. And as we look at reimagining some of our town centers and activity centers from a land use perspective, in the eastern part of our district, closer to the Parkway corridor and what have you, those are definitely conversations we are having with developers. So as we continue to redevelop some of our roadway network in those areas to be more pedestrian and bicycle friendly, you will definitely see us having those conversations with developers to make those kind of things a reality.
And just to add to Supervisor Boddye's comment, we do have standards within our design construction standards for urban areas that include bike lanes as painted bike lanes and bicycle multi-use pedestrian trails in the same corridor. So that does exist within our standards, and it allows the supervisor to have those discussions with those developers.
Thank you for that. So now we'll go into some of the pre-asked questions that people asked when they were registering. This one is sort of more planning related, but I know that Rick and Paulo, you can definitely speak to it. Has the planning office and or transportation department identified the housing density that will be necessary around future Metro Rail and BRT stations in order to compete successfully for the billions we will need in federal and state funding? And will the 2040 comprehensive plan concentrate new development around those future stations or scatter them growth throughout other locations in the county?
Supervisor Boddye, that's a great question. We are working very close to our planning office on the comprehensive plan update, specifically the recommended land uses. So that is currently in the draft plans. And as we identify and work with our planning office on the recommended land use, we can then work on identifying the recommended mobility improvements based on that land use. So it is still very ongoing, and I believe they're still taking comments. So we do want to direct everyone to send their questions to the Pathway to 2040 website for additional information, but it is an ongoing effort.
I think, as Paulo mentioned, Supervisor Boddye, I think it's something that's an ongoing effort. We haven't identified those corridors yet. We don't have identified land use that the planning office has given us yet to identify the densities that they look at. Obviously, you see the densities that are identified in areas such as the North Woodbridge plan, where we do try to tie in multimodal improvements. I suggest wherever we have those types of densities, we will be looking at continually to looking at multimodal nodes throughout the county and see where those happen. Regarding the metro, like you mentioned, that is currently in a study phase to see, if it's even feasible at this time. Once we get some more results and we look at further into that, we'll have a further understanding of what they're going to need. But that study will give us the results of what the densities that we're going to be looking at or needing to bring metro down to Prince William. Again, that's a longer term effort, I think, than the 20 years of the comprehensive plan, but we do include those facilities in our futures transit map that we are continuing to update.
Appreciate that. And the last point I'll add to that is just two final points. One, again, we are going through the land use chapter update to the comprehensive plan, and the planning department has identified activity centers. And we have the small area plans already. So in our district, we have sort of 1.5, I like to call it. We have the landing at Prince William, which is that Caton Hill Telegraph Road corridor that goes all the way down to the Parkway. And then we also have a segment of the Dale City small area plan on that sort of eastern part of the Parkway, just near the intersection between Minnieville and Prince William Parkway. The planning department has also identified Potomac Mills in the area around it as an activity center. They have some proposed changes they're working on, and folks that really like to follow land use, please by all means comment on that. We are really looking at reimagining some of these areas, especially around Potomac Mills, to be more walkable and also be, to the point of this question, more of that concentrated, high dense kind of development that you like to see in a live, work, play community, where people can just walk to the store, they can just walk to the amenities, they can walk to the doctor's offices that are over there in that corridor, as opposed to jumping in their cars. So again, we are identifying those activity nodes, those activity corridors, and we're definitely having conversations with our planning department on how to best plan for those areas and reimagine how they work. The last thing I'll mention is the Department of Rail and Public Transit Springfield Quantico study that Rick alluded to. It concluded their work at the end of last year, and they presented their findings to the General Assembly. I and some of my colleagues have been very big followers of this study, and it's sort of that first volley that we've had recently into talks about more bus rapid transit, more VRE service, more express bus service throughout the county, and to the point metro. And so now that we have some price points and some of that early feasibility work, we can then go to the next part, which is Rick talked about, which is how do we get a more solid plan in place and begin looking at what actually needs to be done to do it. So we're working on all that stuff. We're on our way there, but we are still sort of working through some of the plans and frankly, some of the multi-jurisdictional collaboration that will need to be done, because we get Metro down here, we get BRT down here, it has to go through Fairfax. So that also includes having conversations not only with their elected officials, but also their planning and transportation departments. This question, actually, I just partially answered, but I'll just read it anyway, is how many proposed Metro bus rapid transit stations are in the designated town centers for the draft land use chapter for the 2040 comprehensive plan? And Rick and Paulo, did you guys want to touch on that at all?
Sure, and I think you covered it. And currently in the current approved SMART plans, we do have identified transit nodes or transit centers. Our SMART plans are really, transit-oriented development that facilitate the use of transit. So as we develop the current plan, it's something the planning office will look into moving forward as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if anyone's curious, the landing also is a very good, landing at Prince William is a very good example of that. We haven't had very many land use cases go through that yet, but the concept for that will be a very nice town center concept to what Paulo was just saying, very walkable, condensed community. And it also hopefully be just down the street from the new 14th High School. So there'll also be, education services not too far away from there as well. So I'm going to shift a little bit into specific projects that folks had questions on. I'm going to start with Summit School Road. With the improvements of Summit School Road, I-95 and Route 1 moving forward, are there any plans to connect Devil's Reach Road and Brook Farm Court to improve local circulation? For example, buses, police, and fire to reduce trips on Old Bridge Road and Minnieville.
Supervisor Boddye, and I can handle it. And I think I'm familiar with that roadway. These are two roadways that parallel just west of I-95. There are two dead-end roadways that are very closely located next to each other. There are no plans to connect. Maybe we can work with the community on finding ways to connect those roadways either via a trail or wider sidewalk. But at this time, there's no plans to connect the two roadways, but it's something we can look into.
Sure, absolutely. And as with anything, you know, there's right of way that would need to be done. We have to work with the communities, as Paulo said. There may even be some HOA or private property that would be involved in that. It might be something that we could work on as we look at that new school site, as I mentioned, the 14th high school. But as Paulo said, you know, there's maybe minor things we can do right now, but having a more robust conversation about a full connection will take a community conversation, because let's face it, some folks also don't want cut through traffic. And so that's always has to be in some of our considerations.
And Supervisor Boddye, that's a great point. And at the end of the day, these are residential roadways as well. So we want to make sure they serve our community to get into and from their homes to some of the major roads as well. So that's a great point.
Next question about Summit School. What is the updated timeline for the completion of the Summit School Road Extension project?
So the updated timeline, and we did cover this, it is early 2024. So we do plan to go to what we call construction advertisement sometime this summer, early fall, and get ready to begin construction on that project.
Absolutely. And I just want to take this opportunity to give our transportation folks a great plug. Again, I keep talking about the 14th high school. You know, as of our board meeting a couple of weeks ago, our transportation folks presented that they're entering into an MOU with the school division on how it's going to work. Because the last thing we want to do is do that project and then have to go back and build the infrastructure needed for that school, you know, in terms of driveways, the turning, the signalized lights, that what have you. So our transportation department is in close contact with the school's transportation folks to make sure that as they do that project, they only have to go in there once, do it, make sure all the agreements are in place, everyone knows what part of the street they own, what they have to maintain. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that opportunity to give our transportation kudos on their collaboration there. Let's see, next question. Speeding on Telegraph Road is already significant, with cars traveling well over 35 miles per hour speed limit. How will this be addressed with the extension and expansion of Summit School Road?
Great question. And it's something we talked to our engineers about. When we design a roadway, there's a couple of things we look at. We look at the geometry of the roadway, and based on the geometry of the roadway, we'll identify what we call a design speed. So we have a design speed that implements and allows safe travel through that roadway. Once a project is typically completed, we'll also do a speed study to determine the ultimate speed limit. But it's something we'll work with the police as we complete a project and look at the traffic patterns moving forward as well.
And Supervisor Boddye, I do want to emphasize what Paulo said, that ultimately the speed is decided by a study that's done once the road is completed, and VDOT takes that study, and kind of compares it to what the road was designed for, and they take those two things into consideration and set the speed limit. So ultimately, VDOT is the one who sets the speed limit based on the study done after a road is completed.
Absolutely. And just to go back a little bit, someone asked in the chat what an activity center is, and I mentioned that word quite a few times. Rick, did you pop back to the screen? Do you want to answer that?
Sure, and we don't have activity centers. I think maybe that was just we like saying activity centers because that's what they kind of really are. Activity centers is more a regional term that's used by COG for certain areas around the region that have activity around it, and we do have some of those here within the county. Here in the county, what we refer to as activity centers are really small area plans. And these were areas that were defined initially by the board around the county to be able to study, that we felt, or that the board as well as staff felt would look at densities, would look at multimodal travel, would look at what would be developed through that area and what kind of facilities we would like and how the county would like those areas developed in a denser, more activity center style kind of way. So activity center was really more a term we were using to describe that what we really do have are small area plans that were defined by the board and the planning office, and we are taking a look at to see how we introduce these kind of activity center-ish things to them.
Sure.
I hope that explained it a little better there.
Sure. And Rick alluded to COG, which is the Metropolitan Council of Governments.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, we all have our alphabet soup and our abbreviations we throw out, but the Metropolitan Council of Governments is a regional body that is made up of all the sort of the jurisdictions in the sort of the greater metro area. I sit on the COG board as well, on their Chesapeake Bay, their quality control, and their farm committee, and they help us with a lot of different aspects, but one of the things they also help us with is projections of population and some of that technical work of where it makes sense in the county to focus activity, like an activity center, like that dense multimodal live, work, play environments where you have an anchor, let's say Potomac Mills or a town center or something like that, where there's not a lot of people sort of just driving through it. People drive to it. People live there, people work there, people play there, and it keeps everything very, centralized and compact in that area. So next up is, what plans are there to enable residents of the Brook Farm HOA and Park Center HOA that both have exits on Summit School Road to safely take left-hand turns onto Summit School Road, especially during morning/evening commute times?
Sure. Supervisor Boddye, I can take that. That's a great question. As part of our Summit School Extension project and Telegraph Road, also working with the schools, as you mentioned, we're looking at potential traffic signal at Kennecott Drive and one of the entrances at the school. So that would allow safe passage, especially during peak hour. And while we won't have an additional signal between that intersection and Minnieville Road, having a signal there, especially during peak hour, will stop through traffic, for example, and allow safe passage in other side roads. So it's part of working with the schools, ensuring they have access to their schools, but also helps our neighborhoods adjacent to the schools to enter, exit their community as well.
Thank you for that, Paulo. And the trend we're hearing from folks is safety, right? We know that whenever a road is widened or extended, in this case, folks get concerned about, the speeds. I know folks mentioned earlier Telegraph Road speeds, and, as folks can hear from Paula and from Rick, they do care about that. That's something they look at as we look at these projects. There's studies that are done, different ways in which they monitor the kind of flow put and turn actions people take. So as we build out these roads, we're not only just making it better for people to flow through, we're also hopefully making them safer in the process as well. And last but not least, for the Summit School Road extension, this is the biggest sort of chunk of our pre-asked questions, is how will the new buildings planned or under consideration in the landing at Prince William, such as warehouses, the high school, and now the potential stadium, everyone's heard about that, impact the Summit School Road extension?
So as Boddye, I can take that. The way the current small area plan is identified, Summit School Road and Telegraph are identified either as a boulevard or a minor arterial to carry the traffic through the small area plan. The plan itself also has smaller avenues within that, so it all plays a role on connecting future businesses and other developments coming in, and Summit School and Telegraph will carry traffic through the small area plan, if that makes sense.
I think Paulo hit it right on the head there. We've been working with the schools. We've been working with developers out there. We've been working with making sure appropriate access, and we have a road that we think can handle the future traffic 2040. Remember, this road is not only a destination road, but it's a through road. It's a connection road. It's parallel to 95. So we do look at projections and make sure that we are keeping a good level of service throughout the 20-year lifespan that we look at it.
Sure. And I know there's been some questions, both in the chat and the predetermined ones, regarding the potential Commander Stadium. Just want to reiterate that there's been no set site yet for it. I know there's been news coverage on potential sites. So as of right now, we just want to focus on what's currently sort of planned in our long-range land vision here. So I appreciate the comments. I know folks are concerned about what might happen there, but most of what's being talked about right now is the current long-range land use plan of the landing at Prince William and how that roadway can best accommodate the businesses, the school, the town center concept we talked about, and the more compact residences that we're talking about as well. And I think before I jump to the next questions, I did see someone. Okay, no, that's excessive noise. Just to go back for a quick moment. Let's see. One more question regarding excessive vehicle noise. Are there discussions on including? Okay, so I'll read this a little bit slower so Rick and Paulo can follow. Regarding the excessive vehicle noise, are there discussions on including traffic calming measures such as road narrowing, different road textures to reduce car speeds and in turn reduce car noise?
No, another great question. We do have an active traffic calming program. So we encourage the community to reach out to your office and work with our traffic safety team on identifying residential roadways that have speeding issues. And we have a specific guidelines on conducting speed studies and identifying traffic calm measures, such what you mentioned, speed tables, chicanes, lane narrowing. So that's something, we'd like to work with your office through the community.
I think what's important for everybody to know is that these measures, like Paulo said, are for residential 2-lane roads. These measures are not for a road like Minnieville or a road like what we're building at Summit School here. These are 2-lane residential roads that this guide allows for some of these measures on. And we want to just make sure that the audience is aware of that, as there's a lot of misunderstanding that we can kind of put these kind of measures on bigger roads. We are looking at pilot programs to put certain measures on some larger roads that we're trying to work with VDOT. Again, you mentioned Supervisor Boddye earlier that we've taken a big approach at looking at safety, and the board has made it a priority, and some of that is within that we got to start looking at some of these pilot things that allow us to do some of these measures in some of our bigger roads that we do experience some speeding and safety.
Absolutely. And just to add a little bit more to that, traffic safety has been something that we've been talking a lot about. And as a board, not just in the Occoquan District, but across the entire county. And late last year, I made a directive and requested that my colleagues join me in having a traffic safety work session as a full board sometime this year. And I mentioned that because my colleagues and the transportation staff agreed with us on that. And we'll be hosting that after budget. So I think it was sometime in May. Is that right, Rick?
That's correct. We will be preparing a traffic safety work session with the police, the schools, our department, and VDOT as well. That's going to come talk to the board, explain kind of what we do, but also come in and talk to you about some additional tools that we may be looking to use in the future for traffic calming throughout the county. So it's going to be a host of folks. It's going to be not only talking about what we currently do, but what we would like to start doing, and some thoughts on some studies that we will have done by that time regarding cameras around the county. So we look forward to doing that for you, and we look forward to doing some of these studies and making sure that you're aware of what's going on and have some data sets that you can start making some decisions from.
Absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to that. And as Rick alluded to, some of what we are looking at are cameras. We have the authority to put cameras in certain places, school sites, construction sites, some other areas. So we're definitely looking at that as a possibility as well. Before I shift to the next set of questions about Old Bridge Road, I see 2 hands up, Tiziana and Nancy. Tiziana, did you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Supervisor Boddye and county staff and everyone on the call. Thank you so much for this great presentation. It's really a relief to hear that mobility is a focus on not just transportation and walkability and backability, and there are plans to improve that. So I'm really excited about it. My questions, I have a couple of questions, but they're related to each other. My first question would be, Seeing the county's clean energy goals and common action plan coming in the near future, I was wondering if greenhouse gas emissions are accounted for, and if they're not, if there is a plan to account them for, and how will they be measured? How will we know we are even working towards the county's present and future clean energy goals, which I'm sure it will include transportation. And to follow, sorry to add on to it, but is there any plan to collaborate with the Office of Sustainability, the Joint Environmental Task Force, and the Sustainability Commission, since it's all really related to transportation at the end of the day? So I know it was really long, so let me know if you need me to repeat any of it. Thank you.
Sure. Before I comment, Rick or Paula, do you guys have anything you wanted to add or answer to that before I talked?
Sure, yeah, and Tiziana, thank you for that question. And we work very closely with our partners at COG, at the Council of Governments. They do have established regional greenhouse gas goals, but we as a county also have goals here as part of our strategic plan. So as we move forward into our mobility improvements, we're going to make sure we also follow some of the goals and ensure that we meet some of those regional goals as well. And as Rick mentioned earlier, we're really multimodal. We know that there's many projects that are auto-centric, but we also want to focus on some of the other improvements, improving access to transit, ensuring that we have connected sidewalks and trails. So it is something that we're aware of and plan to continue to meet as we move forward.
Sure, and what I would add to that, Tiziana, and I appreciate it, I knew you were going to go with that question, to talk about the Sustainability Office and some of the collaboration there. When our new Sustainability Officer, who's being hired later this month, just a couple of weeks from now, one of her first goals will be not only to stand up and begin collaborating with the Sustainability Commission on the Community Energy Sustainability Master Plan, but also huddling with all the different departments and department heads and see what work is being done in the sustainability space in particular offices, not only from a public facility standpoint, but also in terms of how much each department can drive towards those goals, pun intended, as Paulo referenced when it comes to COG and our local goals. The last thing I'll say about that is, one of the things that we are looking at is that greenhouse gas inventory and also plantings and other things to really drive at how we can really holistically go after those sustainability goals that we have as a community. And, you know, a big part of that, again, to go back to it, is what we're using, the kind of vehicles we're using to travel, and to go back to something that Paulo talked about, which is going on in OmniRide. I sit on the OmniRide board, I'm a commissioner there, and that zero emissions and other alternative fuel study is a big game changer for OmniRide. It's a big game changer for the entire county, because our main bus provider, our only bus provider from a public standpoint, is OmniRide. And so we're looking at different options of, you know, do we need electric buses only on local commutes as opposed to regional ones, because there might not be enough EV infrastructure yet between here and the Pentagon, or here and Springfield, or here and what have you. We're also looking at hybridization of those vehicles. We're also looking at different vehicle fuel sources, especially right now we're looking at, you know, the cost of gas is going up exponentially. So there's a lot that's going into that zero emission study that isn't just electrification, but also how our vehicles are fueled, hybridization, those things. The last thing I'll mention is EV charging stations. We have them now at the McCourt building, and I know that Paulo and Rick have heard from myself and other board members on that new garage that's going up in the O-Pits area near Potomac Mills. There will be EV charging stations in there as well. While we don't have a county-wide program for EV vehicles, we are beginning to look at that as a piecemeal basis as we continue to work our way towards having sort of a county plan for that and a program for it. So a lot of that is going under the hood on what we're talking about right now, Tiziana. So I appreciate your question there. Next up is Nancy. You have your hand up. You have the floor, Nancy.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
You are.
Excellent. Okay, I have two questions. Two questions and one comment. I'll make the comment first. I'm not sure if this is right on the border of your district. but my observation is that on the overpass of I-95 and Prince William Parkway, right there at the commuter lot, there's a lot of folks that walk from the housing over on the other side of 95 to jobs. Yep, over at the mall and other places. There's lots of foot traffic there, and that's just a crazy area. So I don't know if anyone's taken a look at that to make that more safe before somebody gets hit there, because that is always scary when I drive through there and I see people walking. So I don't know if that's under consideration yet.
Sure, Nancy, I can respond to that quickly. We are aware of the situation there. We have worked with Supervisor Boddye and I believe it's Supervisor Franklin in that area. Is that correct, Paulo?
Yeah.
Because I know it's where a district splits there. But we're working with everybody to try to get something there. We have applied for some grants to do that project, and I know we received partial funding to do this. We also have a developer that has part of that trail on the eastern side of 95 that will hook into what our project is doing. So it's a big coordination effort. We are aware of the issue. It just takes time to get some of these projects. The money that we have for the project is federal, which I always joke about federal projects, especially the smaller pedestrian ones, take 2 years to engineer and 2 months to build. So it's a process that we're going through, but we are very aware, and we are hoping to get something out there for the citizens soon.
I appreciate that, Rick. And just to peel back a little bit more on that, and part of the issue, if you can remind me, is funding, right?
Correct. It's a major improvement there, multi-million dollars, and not only funding, but it's also the issue of, we've been told by VDOT and the Commonwealth Transportation Board that we will be needing what's called a limited access break, because we're breaking the limited access of the interstate and an interstate ramp, which also makes the project run a little longer. So we're working through that right now with both the developer out there as well as our project to see if we can get ahead of that and get that moving a little quicker. But these federal projects, along with these limited access breaks, just take a while to plan and engineer because of the many requirements that go along with those two things.
And I appreciate that. As Rick just said, and that's why I asked the question is, people think sidewalks are sort of minor things. And, when we're talking about major highways and things like that, they are. But even just a sidewalk that would go that stretch of that bridge, you're talking about a multi-million-dollar with an M project there. And some other considerations as well. So money is a big part of it. There are other logistical issues and sort of regulatory issues that Rick alluded to. It's been a priority for my office. Rick and Paul will tell you we bug them about this probably every month, if not every other month. But other offices have other priorities, and so it's all about getting that everyone to the same page on what we should be doing with that. But I hear you, Nancy. You're absolutely right. We see what we like to call a goat trail there. Where people have just walked through some of the grass and the medians. There's so much that you can see that people have ridden their bikes and walked there. It's really beaten down. So we do want to do something about it. We know it's a safety issue. We know it'll improve a lot of connections, like you said, between the residences there and the businesses and the shops across the interstate. But we just have to cobble together some more funding, some other things before we get there.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like there's a quick fix, because the people have to walk where the cars are ramping on and off. So realize it's not an easy one to work on. The other question I had was if the team here can provide any updates on what I thought for coming down I-95 South and onto 123. I thought we were trying to kind of jimmy and borrow the shoulder to help the traffic flow on into our area. So I wondered if anyone could talk about any progress being made there.
Yeah, I think she's talking about the flyover ramp, Paulo. I know you had that as one of the part of your presentation.
Sure, yes.
No,
no?
I don't mean that. I mean, I thought that Mrs. Anderson, before she left,
auxiliary lane project, the
Yeah.
Auxiliary lane. Yeah, the
Sure,
auxiliary.
yeah, and the update we shared didn't have a good graphic, but that is a project that's ongoing. It's under construction and will actually be completed by the end of the year. And if you're out there, you can see work that's being done by VDOT. So that is nearing completion and should be done here by the end of the year.
Great.
But
Yeah, because I
just to make it clear,
Good.
I was going to say, just to be concise and clear, that project is going from the exit point at 123 out to the Prince William Parkway. So it takes the shoulder there. It is not before 123. It's after.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
It's
on
south.
the bridge.
It's southbound.
Yeah, I
No,
thought on
no,
the
it's not the
bridge.
bridge. I wish. I really do wish. I think we need a solution there as well. But we're hoping that by building this lane that allows for people that are exiting 123 southbound and an extra lane that goes all the way out to the entrance of the Parkway interchange with I-95. We're hoping that with that, it allows for less transition of vehicles through that area and a faster movement and faster operation. So we'll see how this phased interim improvement works out and see what further improvements we can do in that area to get that operations over that bridge a little better.
Right. Yeah, because as fast as you get people off 123, if they can't move on 95, it's not going to help us any. So, okay, cool. But so just for my brain purpose, we're not kind of borrowing that lane on the bridge to get onto 123 faster. Is that correct?
Using the shoulder beyond the bridge after the 123 exit. They're actually replacing and removing a sound wall and actually stacking it on top of the retaining wall out there so they don't have to get right away, but they're borrowing the shoulder there from that exit to the Parkway, not before.
Okay, and that's why that wall has been removed and you had that presentation.
Correct.
Okay,
Absolutely.
cool. That makes sense. Okay, and then just last comment. This has been a great presentation and it helps to see the future. And Mr. Boddye, if we could have another town hall to just talk about the land use proposals for the pathway to 2040. You talked about some projects for our area specifically. Your idea for Potomac Mills sounds really cool. So that'd be interesting to have some review of that. And then also just the overall, as you know, the land use in the county and the historic proposals to change significant tracts of land for the data centers on the western side of the county. If we could specifically have a review of our district and then again, just other large projects in the county, I think that'd be a great town hall that we'd like to hear about too.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, no, my staff and I are always thinking about, projects and town halls and programs that folks really want to hear about. And we know that land use is top of mind right now for many of the projects you alluded to, especially those in the western. But there are some really good projects coming through the pipeline and some really good updates to the land use chapter and the housing chapter right here in our district. But yeah, we'll definitely look at where we can fit something like that in.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And before I start, the last thing I'll do before I jump into the next set of questions is Bob Zimmerman asked about what is happening about the flyover at the corner of 123 and Old Bridge. I believe Mr. Zimmerman came in after you were talking about that, Paulo. So you just go back and spark the first thing.
Sure, yeah, Mr. Zimmerman, that's an active study. We're working with VDOT, what we call the STAR study to identify improvement. That is a county priority. It's a county mobility bond project. And we've also applied for different funding sources and have been fortunate in getting funding sources for that project. So it's something we continue to prioritize as a county project and find ways to fully fund, but it is an active study at this time.
Okay, so next set of questions. Old Bridge Road, and give me a second while I move over to that. I think there we go. Why do plans call for widening Old Bridge Road to 6 lanes between the Parkway and Minnieville, where the intersection improvements at the Parkway to Old Bridge Road should help divert traffic away from Old Bridge Road?
Okay, so but I can take that. I believe the reference is to the map that's been posted on the Pathway to 2040 website. There is a segment of Prince William Parkway, and quick background, Old Bridge Road is currently designated as 4 lanes. And what we're showing in the map is to analyze that section potentially as 6 lanes based on the recommended land use. It is not something in the plans, but something that will be analyzed based on the land use. So it is something for analysis purpose only at this time, and nothing has been approved for additional lanes on Old Bridge Road.
I think what I want to emphasize, Supervisor Boddye, about what Paulo just said is the fact that the map that's online is like an everything in the kitchen sink kind of map. It's things that the county staff, the county has heard from other people, county has heard in the couple of years that we've been talking about this update that wants to be looked at. If you look at that map in the fine print, it also says that we're going to be able to look at other facilities as we understand the land use. The main thing I want to say about that map is that we don't know the land use behind it. So when we looked at those facilities, that was just facilities that we've been looking at historically and knew that we wanted to kind of examine. But until we have the land use, we cannot really make our recommendations in what's going to move forward. We expect to get that this recommended land use later on this month to start our analysis. We expect to have our analysis 6 to 8 weeks after we get that recommended land use, and we'll be able to make recommendations and show a map of what we really think we need to continue to look at or have the Planning Commission and board look at through their work sessions. Thank you.
And the last thing I would add to that is there is a small segment of Old Bridge, which I know has been sort of on the map for a little while, between Colby and Minnieville. And again, that's a much smaller section. That's not all the way from Minnieville to the Parkway. But when you look at some of the movements there, especially with how crowded that Tackett Mill area gets between Colby and Minnieville, there was some consideration there as well. But again, as Rick just said, and as Paula mentioned in the past, all this is predicated on how that land use comes in and that recommendations of how dense things might be, the kind of businesses and activities that might go on that area before we, even start soliciting comments or feedback. But of course, there'll be a segment to do that as well, because this is all part of hearing from you all as we continue to look at these plans for mobility and land use. This one should be pretty easy. When will the Woodbridge Star study be complete?
Sure, Supervisor Boddye, and we did recently have meetings with VDOT. They're looking to finalize the whole corridor, the 123 Route 1, 123 95, and 123 Old Bridge. And the plan is to finalize it early this year and sometime this spring.
Thank you for that, Paolo.
And I think that it needs to be said that it's very important that we do finalize the studies as the 2 bookend projects here, both 123 and the 123 Old Bridge, are submissions that we're putting into the smart scale process. The final submissions are due towards the end of the summer, and we have to have those concept plans completed before we do our final submission.
Appreciate that. And the next question was about the 123 and Old Bridge Road interchange, and we've talked about that quite a bit here and there. So I don't think we need to go too much more into that one. But Paul, I see you unmuted yourself, so go for it.
Sure. In terms of the improvements identified, conceptually, we are looking what we showed as part of the mobility bond, which is going to be a ramp from 123 to westbound Old Bridge Road. The exact location and design will be determined once we go into design. And until we identify full funds, we don't have a definite schedule at this time. We'll continue identifying potential funds for the project.
And Supervisor Boddye, we do have very clear understanding that this creates some access issues for some very important businesses out there. And we will make sure that as we start doing design on this project, we coordinate further with the community to find out exactly what's needed and how, and if we can provide it and how we can provide it. So we will get to that as design moves forward. As we're looking at the study, this is just a study and a concept that we're looking to get the design and ultimately the construction funded for this through either smart scale, NVTA, or any other funding source that we can go after for this project. I think we're also looking at doing the federal program that's come out that we are looking for to do this corridor and these improvements as well. So we are looking for money everywhere and turning every rock so we can get this completed. But once we have that and we start that design, we will get back with the community to make sure that we are doing the right thing out here.
So appreciate that, Rick and Paulo. I know that we have at least one, if not multiple, of those business owners and residents that you discussed that live right off of 123, or they have their business off of 123, that have expressed their concerns in other forums, even as recently as the last sort of town hall we did together. So I appreciate that finer point. The last big section we have, and I know we're coming up on time here pretty soon, is transit. The first question is, when will the next study of BRT and Metro start?
So both another great question. Well, not a specific study, but it is being looked at various regional plans, where there's a corridor looking at potential BRT improvements. But we are working with DRPT on the next steps of that study and working with their elected officials. So more to come on Metro as well as BRT along the major corridors in the county.
Right. And the last thing I'll add to that is this isn't a one and done sort of thing. These time of improvements where we're talking about BRT, railway extension, expansion, and of course Metro, they don't all happen all at once. There was probably be a step up process there where we build capacity, we see what works, what doesn't work, because obviously expanding bus routes and having BRT is going to happen a lot quicker and a lot cheaper than railway expansion. And it's a lot quicker and a lot less expensive than a Metro expansion. But all those things sort of need to be in place so we can look at what the community wants to see, but also what makes the most sense for each part of the community. You know, there are certain communities in our district where they may be too far away from the BRE for that to be a feasible thing for them. There may be other folks that, you know, they really want to see Metro, especially if they're around that Potomac Mills landing at Prince William area. But until Metro comes, there can be strategic place where we put bus rapid transit stations to begin building that culture around mass transit, especially in light of us finally having an off-ramp from COVID. So there's a lot in that, but we're definitely working on, as Paulo said, that next step and what those sort of planning and studies look like. Last question. What steps are being taken toward providing people who are now mobility challenged with easy entry to public transportation in all government buildings?
And something we can relate to, at least I can speak with the different mobility improvements that the county implements. We do follow federal requirements, the American with Disabilities Act, or ADA. So we ensure that our projects have adequate ramps and access. And many of our transit partners also ensure that their transit facilities have the same adequate access as well.
Sure. Appreciate that, Paulo. And before we close out, there are a few more. Rick, did you have something to add while I look at the other questions?
No, I was just going to mention that I see the question on the chat there about the flashing yellow lights, and I did want to address it. The question says, there are flashing yellow lights in many of the lighted intersections on Old Bridge. Why not have one on Oakwood intersection? What I wanted to kind of get to is that we don't have many yellow flashing lights on Old Bridge Road. The only flashing yellow light we have in the county, or on this side of the county, outside of fire stations and emergency building facilities, is the one that we have here on the Parkway over across from Token Forest. And the reason that is up there is because it was originally supposed to be a signalized intersection, but VDOT did not warrant the intersection. And in order to keep the improvements that we had up there, we had to provide something that would let it operate and not let the system kind of, I would say, rot from no usage. So we're hoping to get those signals up as soon as they're warranted with that development there. But we don't, VDOT is not in the business and will not allow us to put flashing yellow lights at intersections that are not emergency for emergency vehicles.
Sure. And the next one, Carlton Phillips would like to ask a question about the flyover ramp. So Jason, if you could unmute Mr. Phillips. He's C. Phillips in the Zoom screen here. There you go. Mr. Phillips, you are unmuted, sir. Go for it.
Yeah, can you hear me now, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay. We've been watching this for a long time, and I apologize. I'm not very savvy with the computer, so you have to bear with me. But it looks as though no one has even taken a look at the left turn lane going over the commuter lot there. Everything looks like it's gonna take part of my building and my parking lot away in front of my building. And we're talking about 15 homes, 600 boaters, two gas stations, a KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken place and all that will be almost impossible to get to. And I don't think anybody's considered this.
Again, with all transportation projects, there are impacts to the surrounding residents, commercial areas, businesses. So we do understand that, and that's why I mentioned earlier that as we're moving forward with the design, we will see what we can do, what we can best do to continue to provide access to those facilities, to those businesses, to those homes, to those neighborhoods as best as possible. And if not, we will try to look at the impacts and see what we can do to have other way outs or something in place. But we do the best we can in trying to provide that access, but all transportation projects as they come in, especially in an area that's already developed, do create access issues to some of the businesses, residents, and development in that area. We're doing improvements throughout Route 1 right now where everybody on Route 1 before we started widening it had full access, left, right, in, wherever they wanted to go because there was no median. All that has changed now by widening the facility and introducing a median to it, so access is a little more limited. We understand this happens again in more dense areas and more developed areas, but we try to accommodate as much as we can.
Am I still unmuted?
Yes, you are, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay, can you imagine 300 or 200 or 100 or 50 boats leaving my property, have to go to Devil's Reach Road, make a right turn, go 2 blocks, make a U-turn on 123 to come back to go to 95. You talk about a traffic block up, you talk about a mess, you'll have a mess. You'll have accidents, you'll have people getting killed, and it's what happens. And I don't think anybody's considered what happens when a man's towing a boat. He's trying to make a left turn to go to 95, and he has to make a right turn and go 2 to 3 blocks and make a U-turn in all the traffic in the world. And we've got a real problem with southbound 123 trying to get on 95 too. And then you've got these cars trying to make a U-turn. And I know that we'll all say it's good, better for the community, better for the community, better for the community, but voters are the community also.
And again, we will look at the situation as we look at design. What we have right now is a concept plan and can't determine right away or access impact needs from just a concept plan. We will get back to you as the project moves forward, and we will be in touch with you to talk through possibilities. Thank you.
Okay, well, I've also realized that, but I'm not a designer of highways and all, but you've got a commuter lot right across the street from me that there are cars there. And I've looked at what you could draw over there, and you'd probably lose 15 parking spots if you run the overpass over that. 15 parking spots is nothing compared to what you lose if people go there and get killed trying to make a U-turn.
We will take a look at the traffic studies when we do the design. Thank you.
Thank you. You can mute me again now.
I appreciate your comments, Mr. Phillips. We'll continue to work on this with you. And we know that you have a unique business. Like you said, you have unique traffic with the boats being towed and what have you, but we'll definitely make sure we work with our transportation folks to address that as best we can. Lastly, I would like to just go back to Tiziana right quick. She has asked a couple of times, I'll give her the floor right here now. If there is time, she'd like to know, and we all like to know, how equity, diversity, and inclusion are taken into account when making plans, especially in terms of transportation and mobility, as we've talked about tonight.
Sure, that is something we definitely look into, and I'd like to take some example experience on Route 28 project. We do, for example, on that project, we have a Spanish population in the community, so we find ways to ensure that we accommodate all attendees whenever we have information meetings and such. So it's something we look at. We work with our state partners, for example, when we look at studies to identify what the demographics are in the area and to make sure that we make certain translations available for our project. For another example is most of our virtual information meetings are also presented and online in Spanish, and same thing when we advertise for certain projects as well. So it's something we look into as we implement projects.
At the same time, as you know, Supervisor Boddye, we implement many federal projects, and our transit partners are all federal recipients. So we do follow all federal Title IV, civil rights, and all kind of requirements that we do to make sure that we are equitable in what we do and that we're inclusive. We also make sure that we include in all our projects, like mentioned earlier, sidewalks and trails, as well as trying to improve the transit corridors as we're moving along these roadway improvements to make sure that there's access for all. So with that said, I think those are some of the main things we do to make sure that we are equitable and inclusive in what we do in our transportation projects.
Appreciate that. The last thing I'll add to that, and gentlemen, you hit the nail on the head with a lot of that, is that we know that there are older facilities in the county when it comes to these roadway facilities, sidewalks, things like that. And Rick and Paulo and all their team have been doing a really good job at looking at those areas throughout the county where we have stuff that may not be up to current ADA standards. You know, we have a project that's going on in Mill Street in the town of Occoquan where they're looking at bringing that up to snuff. We have some projects going on in the Springwoods corridor, some of these other older neighborhoods where they were built where either at the time they were up to code or they were built with some of these rural road guidelines where they didn't necessarily have to do that kind of stuff. But now they're coming back and adding those ramps, adding those crossing facilities, adding the type of ramps and things that are necessary for folks, especially those that have mobility issues. And the last thing I'll say about that is we know that there are communities throughout our district, especially in the eastern end of our district, that they're older communities that are the more diverse communities, and they haven't had as much access to the newer state-of-the-art transportation and mobility infrastructure that some of the newer built-out portions have. You know, looking at Devil's Reach versus, let's say, Westridge or parts of Lake Ridge. So we're definitely looking at that as part of the land use and the mobility chapters where we can begin to make those connections. I know one of the questions we get a lot is Elm Farm Road, for example. When is there a sidewalk coming in there? And I bug Rick and his folks all the time about that. But again, these are multi-million-dollar projects, even just for a sidewalk. But we continue to look at opportunities to apply for the federal, state, local, and regional grants to begin to connect those older communities that don't have access, the same access to some of those newer bike, ped, and walkable facilities. So that said, we have 5 minutes left, and I'll give everyone an opportunity to give closing statements. Neil, if you're still around, I'll give you the floor, sir. I know you haven't talked in a while.
Yeah, I got caught up, dropped a couple times, but yeah, I'm online. Just want to mention that in addition to the Occoquan Greenway, there are other major trail projects. The Potomac Heritage National Scenic Trail. It will enter the county, the town of Occoquan, and then go over to Belmont Bay, and then on south through the county. And close by to us, the Diabsco Greenway Trail Project, a number of initiatives there. So those will be great recreational opportunities. And I just want to add that, remind everyone that the Parks Department needs resources to do the trail projects, especially the recreational trail projects. They need to have staff to do trail planning, to work on obtaining easements or even land acquisition and funding for maintenance. So just, I'll close with that. Thank you.
Appreciate the budget plug deal. Especially with how diplomatic you were with it. We are in budget season. We're looking at both funding for all these improvements, all these greenways, all these trails, and we need to make sure that our budget supports them. So I appreciate that, Neil. Thank you so much. Paulo, Rick, you have the floor.
Supervisor Boddye, and just to close, and you've seen the different projects. As we continue to implement projects, as we go from planning and design, we will continue to have virtual or in-person information meetings, and we do open, ensure we accept public comments. So we encourage the community to stay alert and make sure they attend our meetings or submit comments as we continue to move forward with many projects in the Occoquan District. But we want to thank everyone for the time today.
Supervisor Boddye, I'd like to close my statements by thanking you for your support of our transportation program. You consistently compliment and highlight our projects at the board meeting. We do appreciate that. Only you can make that possible. But I do want to highlight the fact that since you've been in office in the Occoquan District, which is also my district, and you are my supervisor, so I do have some fondness there. But we have the Old Bridge and Parkway improvement that got funded. the Occoquan Road Old Bridge improvement that got funded through Smart Scale, Summit School Road, which is now fully funded, 3 major bike pedestrian projects on the Old Bridge Road corridor. We're looking at working on the Minnieville Parkway interchange over there as part of your district as well. And we're looking at doing a project to improve the commuter lot over at the Horner Road, Old Horner Road, or Prince William Parkway commuter lot. You got some major studies looking at corridors in your area. For a developed district like Occoquan, I think the number and the Mill Street project you mentioned, for the Occoquan district that's so dense and a little smaller than the other districts, I have to say that that I think that you're doing a great job in promoting transportation and making sure that that your district gets more of its share of transportation improvements than some of the rest of the other districts in the county. So we do appreciate your support. We do appreciate you working with us, which is making it easier for us to get some of these improvements funded and done within your district.
Appreciate that, Rick, and I appreciate you highlighting that. There are quite a few projects during our board meetings that go on the consent agenda at the beginning of our meetings that they just sort of fly by and no one really knows what they are. But as Rick said, I always try to make it a point for the public and for our constituents to know just what's going on. Rick, Paulo, Neil, a lot of the folks that you heard from tonight do a lot of work behind the scenes trying to get great projects into our district. So like I said before, help move people through our district better and safer and allow people to spend more time with their families instead of sitting in traffic or having to try to cross a dangerous roadway. So we can't do without you guys. So I appreciate all your hard work, Neil, Paulo, Rick, and all your teams that I know that sit behind you guys every single day doing the good work for our community. Wanted to take this opportunity to again thank all the constituents and all the folks we had on the town hall tonight. We never seem to have enough time when we talk about transportation, but I appreciate that. I appreciate having constituents such as you all who are so engaged that you'll be able to spend an hour and a half with me talking about road projects, bike ped, sustainability, equity, inclusion, and how all those things connect together. I'm a better supervisor when I hear from you, and I'm sure that, as Rick and Paulo said, we do better work when we hear from our constituents. So again, I cannot thank you all enough. Again, this will be recorded for anyone that came in late or may have missed it. It will be on our YouTube page, and please reach out to me in my office if you have any further questions. Without further ado, thank you everyone and have a great night. Thanks everyone.